Greetings, brothers. Welcome to the weekly tactics video. Today we're going to be getting into 3 different Blood Angels army lists. I'm going to be joined by Sam Procopio, a recent Blood Angels GT winner. Alright, greetings, brothers. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here with Sam Procopio, and we're going to be talking all things Blood Angels in terms of competitive play and army lists over the next half hour or so. Sam has recently been doing very well with a GT win back in December and some other very impressive finishes. Sam's also been doing some stuff on YouTube, and he's going to tell you all about that now.
So yeah, I mean, I started a YouTube channel recently, more of a passion project. I think that's how they all come to be, called Sanguinius 40K. And in a nutshell, it's just kind of trying to take people through my journey through the ITC season and seeing where I can take our Sons of Sanguinius together.
Yeah, so thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Sam. I did actually go over one of your lists in December, which was pretty interesting. That was a double eliminator list, was it?
I do believe so, with the Inceptors as well, which people always kind of looked at me funny. But when haven't people looked at me
Okay. All right, and we've prepared a few slides, and we have the list that you just ran, and this is the list that's actually featured in Aspect Tactics as well at the moment, I believe, because I saw this list over there.
Yeah, this was my my recent Motor City Mayhem list that I've been practicing with for quite a while. For those of you who maybe have been following my journey, you'll realize very quickly that I'm someone who loves to get the repetition and get lots of practice in with the list and really make it my own, and not in terms of what I'm bringing, but how I'm using it on the table. So this essentially is just a an iteration of something that I've been running even prior to the new year with a new mission pack. So just in a nutshell, we have my chapter master, can't leave home without him with the combination he has. The sanguinary priest, of course, I always go with. Librarian for a bit of psychic tech that I think is important for us in the current meta. The usual 3 troops that I bring. I'm pretty sure everyone's bringing double cursors for obvious reasons. I do like the auto bolt rifle intercessors personally. That's just again my preference. And then I have the 3 squads of sanguinary guard, 2 larger ones at 7 mans, 1 smaller one. The 3 aggressors, which everyone is always confused about. The combat scouts, because they just do so much for me in my list, especially because they are arriving in a storm. And then I also have the voidsmen, forgot about them in the beginning, and the eradicators. So that's kind of my list high level. But essentially, yeah, I've just been chipping away at it, lots of repetition. John and I have discussed, we discussed this quite a bit in terms of what it does and how it plays. And fortunately, I was able to play on stream, and people saw what I could do with it, which was really cool. But just again, just all about adapting and playing to your strengths, even as a player, and with your playstyle.
Sure, so let's talk about some of these interesting picks then. Aggressors, let's start there. I mean, these are aggressors with flamers, right?
These are aggressors with the Boltstorm gauntlets, actually. So no
Okay,
flames.
right.
Yeah, so for me, it was a lot about volume. Just because I've in my meta specifically, and what I've realized is my army does have incidental shooting, but I feel like something with some real substance could bring a lot of value. The reason why I like the aggressors is honestly just because of they're not expensive at all considering what the other options are. Um, I'm sure when Mr. Stephen Box himself explains his list, we'll obviously dive into the Centurions for obvious reasons. But I was at a crossroads actually in my list design where I was debating on the three Centurions or 3 aggressors, and I realized in order for Centurions to work, you do need a larger squad, in my opinion. And because I wasn't willing to invest the points, because I'm very much a toolbox player with all these different tech choices, I like to call them in my list. The 3 aggressors just naturally fit better because if we could do quick math, even I believe the 3 aggressors, the 3 eradicators, and the voidsmen pretty much equal 5 assault centurions. But again, I like my options, so they just definitely made a lot more sense for me in my list.
Okay. Do you find that you miss the double shooting on aggressors that they used to have last edition, or you just deal with it?
Yeah, no, I actually never used them in the last edition, so I've never felt I've never felt that that missing aspect. But definitely would be really nice to have double shooting aggressors. I could tell you that much.
Oh, I loved them last edition. I played them all the time. I thought it was such a good tactical choice because you only get the double shooting if they remain stationary. But it always felt like
Right.
if you're going for center board, if you were smart, there was always turns you could remain stationary and dump out double fire. So the other thing I
Yeah.
guess that to talk about is you run 3 squads of Sanguinary Guard. How do you feel about -1 damage enemies? Or you just don't feel like you care, or because that's my hold up on running 3 Sanguinary Guard, because I ran them into friggin' night Chaos Knights last night actually, and -1 damage on the knights just neuters them so hard it feels like.
Yeah, so if I feel like the biggest thing for Sanguinary Guard, and I'm sure everyone has their opinions on them, what's better, what's more optimal, having mixtures and whatnot. And I'm telling you right now, there's definitely no wrong answer. It's really about preference at the end of the day. For me, and obviously back to what your question is, for me, what the Sanguinary Guard bring to the table is not killing power. Now, I know it's going to sound absolutely absurd because you're like, well, what do you mean? They're a unit that has 35 attacks that hits on 2s and heroically intervenes and all this, but I don't look at them as a unit that does damage for me. Of course, can they do damage and does it terrify opponents? Of course, they always will. But it's actually more about just their board presence and what they can offer on the table in terms of actual board control. So that's kind of why I appreciate what they do. These large areas of influence with heroic interventions to protect units. That's what I'm trying to really go for with my list design, rather than the damage output. Because a lot of people are bringing 3 squads of 7 Sanguinary Guard, maybe 3 squads of 8, and we've even seen on your recent video the 30 Sanguinary Guard, where those lists are all damage based. They're all very much, I'm running forward, you're not going to deal with me fast enough, and then I'm going to kill you by turn 2 or turn 3 if you're lucky. But that's just, again, there's no wrong answer to doing that either. If that works for you, it works for you. But with essentially my approach with the 3 units, it's more about board control and just threatening, just because the weight of attacks that they have does make up for the -1 damage most of the time. Now, of course, we've seen it. I don't know if you've seen on stream where I ran into 9 Tyranid warriors with -1 damage. It did feel bad, unfortunately, where I wasn't able to shift them. But there were so many things in that game that I could have actually have done better. Even though I did score 92 in the loss, there were some different plays that I could have definitely pulled off to make sure I was able to shift them. But that wasn't a Sanguinary Guard problem. That was a me making that mistake problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, I think, I guess, like you said, most of the core of Blood Angels, you see the Death Company with the 3 hammers. It's very common. You see
Yeah.
the Chapter Master and the Sang Priest to give them basically the Alpha Strike. The Storm and the Scouts. I've seen so many people on my channel always tell me to buy Landspeeder Storm. Tell me, how many points, how many points does this get you in games? How do you feel about
Oh
it?
wow.
Is it top tier?
In my opinion, I've tried writing lists without the scouts and the storm, and I always find myself just coming back to them, just because there are so many games where I need to choose those, off meta secondary picks where it's just like, okay, I'm in a matchup that I'm not familiar with or not that I'm not familiar with, just I'm not really accustomed to picking secondaries well against, especially on some really obscene, just instances where I was going up against 17 Custodes bikes round 1 of the tournament on Recover the Relics, which is a hammer and anvil 6 objective mission. It's like, what secondaries am I really taking in this game? And all of a sudden, because the scouts are there, because the storm's there with the voidsman, all of a sudden I'm able to, unlock a secondary like behind enemy lines, and Oath the Moment, because there's no reason for the Custodes player to come to the middle of the board. So Oath, I can just keep a unit there for as long as possible until he addresses it, which is not what the Custodes player wants to be doing. And then behind enemy lines, by having all this movement on one side of the board where he's weaker on, to just throw units in, and if he addresses them, by all means, my Sanguinary Guard and my characters aren't being touched. And if he doesn't, I'm just going to continue to rack up points. And I believe I finished that game with 14 points on behind enemy lines, just as an example, like how crazy. I've never taken behind enemy lines, or at least I haven't in like, I don't know, for maybe a month or 2. And that was in a test game. You know what I mean? So it's just like them being able to do something like that for me, contest objectives, do actions for me on a whim, just really goes a long way for my playstyle.
I was gonna say like 17 bikes. I think I played against like 13 and it was friggin' horrific. So 17. You must have had like 1,400 points of bikes at that point, the Custodes
Oh
player.
yeah, yeah. And actually, the worst part was he was using the emissaries version of Custodes, and he charged me turn 1 with 16. Sorry, with 6 bikes. It was crazy.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say. Okay, so Librarian, Psychic Scourge. It's never a power I've taken. Why Psychic Scourge? What's it offer?
Yeah, Psychic Scourge is something that's actually been really important for me. People don't take it for some reason. Everyone goes with, I think it's Veil of Time, and they also go for the +1
Might of
strength, +1
Heroes?
toughness.
Yeah.
Yes, Might of Heroes. Thank you. So Psychic Scourge just gives me an extra potential D3 mortal wounds. The reason being is because, believe it or not, a lot of people, or a lot of the good players I play against, they know that you can actually get away with tagging Blood Angels units, because when we're just tagged, for example, when they consolidate into us, we're actually not as potent at killing things because no +1 to wound, no extra attacks. So a lot of the time, we're able to, I've realized, pile in and do some work, for example, but never quite enough. And the librarian, with this extra potential of 2d3 mortal wounds, just has for some reason, has shored up all of these strange scenarios that I'm always put in, where a Harlequin player will like tag the end of a sanguinary guard squad with a boat, and then there you are just trying to chop a boat, and you're like, well, I can't kill it now, I can't fall back in charge, and this is a horrible field bad. And the librarian really does a straight job of just being able to peel off those last few wounds that maybe the 3 sanguinary guard that could fight into it couldn't get a hold of. So he just definitely shores that up. And then of course, in my meta, for example, there's a lot of Eldar. I mean, I guess all over the world there's a lot of Eldar. But especially with these Phoenix Lords that you can only take 3 wounds off per turn, he comes in and all of a sudden the Phoenix Lord has to be super cautious about approaching my army, like Karandras or Baharoth, for example. So he's been really big for me.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I actually used to play Mephiston with Blood Boil, and I think those sort of picks like Catan and stuff just fell out of my meta. So sometimes
Right.
that you can be picking something and thinking, yeah, it's really useful, and then
Right.
everybody stops playing Catan, and you're like, yeah, I don't need that anymore, and you drop it, and then 6 months later, it comes and bites you back in the ass. So
Correct.
maybe I need to remember that Mephiston is more of a buffing character than a. Although on paper you want to fight with Mephiston, he's actually not that good at fighting. At least in my
Oh,
experience.
oh, trust me. Oh, trust me. I know.
Um, cool. And then last thing, I guess, is something that I'm actually in the process of making conversions for at the moment. Actually, is Voidsman at Arms. I assume this
Yeah.
is a 48-point squad that
Yep.
just starts in reserve.
Yep. They start in reserve in a teleportarium chamber. Every time they're just starting off the board, they're able to pretty much come where they need to. And of course, if someone is paying attention to screening them out, that's 48 points that they have to screen out and respect. So I mean, no sweat off our shoulders when you and I are able to bring a unit like that into the game. So I mean, it's again just that respect factor. It keeps a unit out of the game, or you get that extra retrieve data that they don't want you to easily have. So it's you really do start asking your opponents these weird questions over the course of the game when you have units like Voidsmen, Scouts, and a Storm, for example, that people aren't really accustomed for, and you can see that not even doesn't catch them off guard. It's just like, well, how can I be addressing these units when I have 14 Sanguinary Guard, a couple of characters, and aggressors on my doorstep, for example, right?
Yeah. And then the last thing, I guess, is so you don't run the banner for the +1 to hit. Instead, I do like to run 3 characters. So I guess because you aren't running the banner, you're running Rights of War on your Chapter Master. We often see
Definitely.
Rights of War run on the banner. I mean, there's no reason that he needs to be run on the banner bearer. That's just typically what we see people run. I
Right.
think is like the Sanguine Ancient seems to be a good character to run Rights of War on. Um, the value on Visage of Death and Rights of War, on average, how many games has that provided? Like, it provides big swings in lots of games, or it just depends on your opponent, really? How do you feel it's worth it for every game?
Um, you know, I feel like the best answer for that is, and obviously I'm focusing a lot on trying to compete at the highest level. So against the players who that I'm able to outskill in a game, for example, just by understanding how to approach the mission better, he doesn't actually come up as much. And I'm sure you've had many tools in your toolbox where they didn't really come to play just because you were able to, again, just by knowledge of the game, be able to outmaneuver your opponent. But then in those key games against those players that are better than me, he's made such a massive difference with these giant swings in certain areas of the board, because he is essentially that easy button of flipping an objective at any point to some degree. And especially if you're going second with him, and you have that bottom of turn scoring, he's your most crucial asset on the table that needs to be kind of protected almost at all costs. So I've learned just like how to use him, just because I honestly I've used him for 2 years now, or since the codex came out. I came up with that combination really quick, and again, not that like I'm anything crazy for discovering that combination. Anyone that read the rules would have figured that out quick. But just I got so just practice with how to use them. I think that's what's made the difference. And for everyone watching and that has Rites of War and Visage of Death available to them, I do recommend that you keep them on the same character just because of how powerful that threat even is. Because now your opponent has to be very cautious about how they're positioning models on objectives, how they're playing a bit more back because they don't want him charging something. It dictates so much away from the actual ability to do it just by him saying you could do it, and it really goes a long way.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't actually run Visage and Rites of War on the same character. I've enjoyed running Rites of War in the Ancient, but
Mhm.
I haven't had to deal with that massive amount of OBSEC presence. I guess since Necrons, and Necrons really aren't, like who's playing Necrons competitively? I guess like I just don't see them. I mean, I've got
Right.
friends that play them, but I don't see them. So the first time I've really had to deal with that in a horrific manner was this week against Chaos Knights, and
Right.
he's 7 armigers. They all count as 5. They're all OBSEC, and then
Mhm.
there was 2 whatever big knights they're called, and one of them was to count as 10 and as OBSEC, and
Yeah.
I just got crushed on the fact that like I couldn't hold anything. I did kill all the knights, but I mean it took me 2 or 3 turns to do it, and at that point the game was lost.
Oh, of
So
course.
I guess this character could have had a giant effect in that game.
Yeah, and again, if you're going second against that knight player, it's like it's almost guaranteed that you're able to lock up some bigger points late because there is nothing he can do about it. And then especially with defending your own objectives, as long as you're not letting him get charged and you're able to block out charges directly to him by wrapping him with units, even literally 5 incursors. I mean, in this theoretical situation, 5 incursors wrapping him behind a wall, and let's say an armiger comes to claim some Space Marines, all of a sudden you can have as many of the incursors as you want, but that objective is still mine at the end of the day because you weren't able to declare my captain. So it's just like, again, it just helps you on primary a bit longer, helps you stay in the fight, allows you to react in certain areas of the board, and I think it is worth a try for everyone that hasn't tried it out yet.
Yeah, cool. Anything else you want to say about this list, or do you want to move on to the next slide?
Yeah, I've gone so in depth on this one so many times. We can move forward, but yeah, excited to see. I'm testing out a couple of things now, seeing where it takes me, and keep growing from there.
Yeah. So has this list got a fight last? Does Landspeeder Storm? He's got an Overwatch denial, right?
Yeah, he has an ignore Overwatch. There is no fight last on the list. The fight last would essentially be the Angel Sacrifice. I consider it almost like a fight last.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with 3 characters like that, you can almost dictate one round of combat. I use that. I love Angel Sacrifice. I think it's probably one of the most powerful stratagems that we have.
Yeah,
This
and
edition, right?
and when the librarian's not important in the game in terms of not doing psychic interrogation or psychic ritual for me, then I'm a bit more lenient and a bit more flexible with how I'm using him. So he's someone who I'm a lot more aggressive with in those games where he's not collecting secondary points for me, and he has armor Indomita, so he's a perfect angel and angel sacrifice candidate.
I was gonna say, so yeah, I haven't played librarians. I haven't played a Space Marine librarian with the jump pack since Armor of Contempt, and I guess you've gone one step further and put Armor Indomits on him. So what's that? 5 wounds and a 2-up save, ignoring -1 AP.
Yeah,
I guess he got a lot more survivable, huh? Does he feel more
he's
survivable
good.
in games?
He totally does. And there's actually some scenarios where people are shooting at me with like AP3 guns. Like I'll literally put him out in the open sometimes because just to like go contest an objective or whatever, and he's touching cover, and then the AP3 guns are I still have a was it still have like a
3-up?
3-up against.
Yeah.
So I don't even have to pop the armor Indominus. So it's like I have 3-ups, then you charge me with high AP, then I pop the armor. So it's just like you need weight of dice to go into me, and are you really doing all of this to try and kill this one librarian that's causing a nuisance? It's just it creates these really silly scenarios, I've learned.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the only thing, final question on this list then, and maybe you can tell me what I was doing wrong. I played the librarian with Null Zone Psychic Fortress. I used Mighty Heroes, but I mean, I guess that's semantic, really. I found every time I wanted to Null Zone, I usually ended up having to sacrifice my librarian. Is that how you play him? Because usually, like, you might, Null Zone's only 6 inches. You have to jump forward. Sometimes you even have to advance forward and then Null Zone to be where you need to be. And then usually he's quite exposed and he's dead. But, I mean, again, I guess now you could wrap them in 7 Sangre Guard that essentially have a 1-up save, which is a lot more better.
Yeah, yeah. So the way I look at it personally is, and I do agree with you. I feel like when you are going for the null zone play, you do have to come to terms with the fact that he most likely is going down next turn, if not that turn itself. Because if I know he's going to go down, then I'm someone who also, on top of null zone, I'll try and make a charge with him, get him into the best situation possible. So if he's going down kind of thing. Make him an angel sacrifice target. The armor Indomitus, yep, you can't use your 3-up invulnerable save anymore. It doesn't matter. He's potentially won you the game. And Tau was pretty big in my meta up here in Ontario, Toronto, Ontario for quite a while. And I remember in one game I was able to win at the top table surely because the player was a little bit overconfident with his durability, and my librarian died, but he was able to go in the middle of, I believe it was 2 crisis units and a Riptide, and I was able to kill all 3 of those units in one turn, which, if we could do simple math, I mean that kind of ends the game when you lose almost 1,000 points in one go. So
I was gonna say, yeah. Okay. All right. I'm gonna move on, and I'm gonna
yeah,
tell you a couple of things about what I've been playing, I guess. And I guess I feel like I'm still trying to transition into what is best in Armor of Contempt. I guess that would be fair to say. I only play 1 game a week at the moment with the kids, and I haven't been to any tournaments. So I've been running the super survivable captain. In hindsight, maybe I
yep,
should have been trying out the objective obsec Rights of War slash Visage of Death captain, because I guess that is very cool as well. This captain has
yeah,
provided me a lot of value, but I guess it's value in a different sort of way. I remember one game against the Orcs, this captain killed about 800 pounds of stuff by himself.
holy
Uh,
moly,
he is a bit swingy. That Infernal Pistol with the reroll to hit and wound, I like
yeah,
it so much, you know.
yeah, of
I
course.
also love it when it's -5 in turn 3, and it's just like, yeah, you know, reroll. It's super reliable, I guess, on a captain and like
Oh, for
that.
sure.
I was running Mephiston with quicken. Sorry, I didn't have quickening. I was doing Unleash Rage, Blood Boil, and Wings. But I guess,
Yep.
like I said, Necrons fell out the meta, so I try to make Mephiston more of a combat character again. I actually think it's the wrong call for Mephiston. I think probably he is better as a buffing character.
Yeah, I
The
do agree.
the every time I jump him in with quickening, it always feels lackluster.
Yeah.
I like Unleash Rage a lot. I like it that I don't have to sacrifice my librarian. I guess that's what I was thinking. Like Unleash
Yep.
Rage. I think I usually run 7 Sangre Guard. I remember just a few weeks back, like I rolled 13 sixes. So I mean, it is a
Oh,
good
yeah.
portion of additional hits, you know.
That's
So,
that's value town right there.
but is it as valuable as Null Zone? I guess the answer probably is no. Um, it does
Yeah.
feel very valuable. The reason I liked Unleash Rage was I was using online cursors so that like because your cursor's typically going to forward deploy. There's no way to give them rerolls. There's no way to give them +1 to hit from the ancient, but you
Right.
can Unleash Rage them, right? And you don't need to be
Of course.
visible to Unleash Rage them either, which
Yep.
usually means that then cursors in turn 1 can pack a little bit of a punch, which I like.
Yeah.
I've kept the Relic Contemptor. I'm not sold on it. It's too swingy. I kind of hate all these swingy guns anyway, but I actually dropped that this week for the 5-man Death Company that you ran.
Yep.
Sanguine Ancient with the Wrath of Baal because I love the additional movement. I have played like your list without the additional movement, and I'm one of these players that actually feels like the 2 inches from Wrath of Baal isn't make or break for me. I think it's good, but I think you can play fine without it. Um,
So actually, a really quick assessment of your list, because I know we were obviously fixated on the captain getting the whole rights of war and whatnot, but in a new iteration of my list that I'm currently working on right now, I'm actually debating on bringing the ancient into the list. Not for the +2 move though, because I want maybe him to be that cheaper throwaway unit that has rights of war and visage of death on him. So that's something I
okay.
think you should definitely consider, just because he does the same thing that the captain does now in terms of dictates, the objective flipping anywhere on the board. And like we said, the +2 move is not make or break when you're actually positioning your units well on this, current board with pretty decent terrain, which we're fortunate to be playing on. But then also the biggest thing for him and why the whole consideration is happening because he also has the Sanguinary Guard keyword to heroically intervene 6 inches. And I've been thinking about that for a very long time, because now ultimately, if he's behind a wall on an objective, I believe it's like, I think he has to be just like 1.5 onto one edge of the objective. He covers the rest of the objective now, so nothing can just toe in and take it from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you wouldn't need to be 1.5, would you? Not quite as much.
Um,
Is that just one?
well, just like from the entire radius, I believe from one edge of like a a neoprene objective marker to the other, I believe it's 7.5, if I'm not mistaken, something like
You're.
that.
Well, I was
I
going to
could be
say, yeah.
slightly off.
I think you're probably right. The actual objective's probably like a 1.5-inch diameter. I'm thinking it's maybe just one. Yeah, you're probably right. So if he's just touching it, and then the great thing about that is when you heroically intervene, you don't actually need to end an engagement range. So you just
Correct.
heroically intervene, so you're within the 3 inches for they lose their OBSEC.
Yep. So so in that scenario, let's say he's like, "Yep, I'm throwing this giant knight here on this side of the wall to give you a 4 on primary." You use that heroically intervene to make sure that you can get just within 3 of him, and I retain the objective. I still get an 8 on primary. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's
that's
just it's super nice and super helpful in my opinion.
yeah, no, that's huge actually. So, like I said, I've been doing 2 Sanguinary Guard because I feel like I've played enough stuff that has -1 damage. I got a Death Guard player that's like Death Guard till he dies.
Yep.
So -1 damage into Death Guard just always feels horrific.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You jump into like a Plagueburst Crawler with 7 Sanguinary Guard, you can't even kill it,
Yeah.
with its toughness 8 and stuff. So I've been doing this Terminator squad, which in some ways, similar to you, I'm using that Terminator squad typically as a behind enemy lines unit. Like, they're always just going for a space in the backfield, and they'll typically go after the opponent's backfield as well, with 3 Thunderhammers and 2 Lightning Claws,
Yeah.
and obviously the added survivability. It's pretty
Right.
good. My Vanguard veterans, I like them. Have you played much into Armor of Contempt recently?
Like myself, I've actually only played a handful of games, mainly against Grey Knights actually, because Grey Knights, took a big, took a big boost from this as well. So I mean, a lot of the meta, I do have unfortunately play in a very tough meta. So a lot of people are playing always the best armies at the best times. So yeah, Grey Knights was the one that I really played the most into, but I've never, I think I've played Vanguard Veterans for like 3 months total out of the last, like, I want to say 18. So like I haven't really experienced too much about them, but I've been hearing that they've been kind of feeling iffy lately. But I don't know, how do you feel about them?
Yeah, I mean, they feel terrible. I played into
Uh,
Khorne Berserkers, and I guess before, in turn 1, they'd have been -2, and then they'd get up to -3. Now into the Berserkers in turn 1, they're -1. So,
Essentially,
like, they just bounced off.
yeah.
Typically, before, I guess, you would expect your 5-man squad with a bunch of Lightning Claws to kill most of the Berserkers, I guess. And now it was like, well,
Yep.
I guess it's just like Chainswords. So if you imagine an Assault Intercessor squad goes into a squad of other Marines at -1, they don't do very much. They kill a couple of Marines. That's exactly how the Vanguard vets feel. I mean, I guess it's a weird situation, though, where they're legitimately still good against other armies, but they
Right.
feel terrible into Marines, or I guess anything that's going to get Armor of Contempt.
Right.
So, yeah, Vanguard veterans, I guess, have taken a pretty big hit. Then I've just got 1 land speeder, same eradicators, and I'm holding on to that whirlwind, even though people keep flaming me for bringing it.
No, and they shouldn't, because the whirlwind is a lot more important than people think, to be honest. And I understand indirect took a pretty big hit. It is what it is, but their ability to still chip a few wounds away, depending on where you need it or how you need it, it definitely still helps. And people keep forgetting, the whirlwind doesn't just hit on 4s all the time. If you can get a bead on that, cheap chaff unit out in the open, you're hitting on 3s again. It's only when you're shooting from completely out of line of sight, and because you have a 72-inch range on your weapon, it's easy to outrange all the weapons that could threaten your whirlwind back. So I mean, using a whirlwind doesn't mean it's such a not optimal. And besides, you have an automatic fight last ability now, the automatic turn off Overwatch ability. So therefore, in your list, you don't necessarily need a storm then. And at the end of the day, it's still a pretty fast moving chastity that can hold a back corner, screen out a side of the board for you, and do a lot of work. So I'm totally all for your decision.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, it combos a little bit with the land speeder as well, then it gets a +1 to hit if your target's within 18 inches of land speeder, so you can still hit on 2s. And later in the game, if they don't have that much firepower, I tend to move it out of cover now, which is a very small thing to just edge its nose out of cover and be like, well, I can see you,
Exactly.
so there's no -1 to hit.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this list is maybe still struggling. I think the ones that the thing that's so I ran this list this week. I dropped Mephiston for a Sangori Priest with a
Right.
Selfless Healer, and I dropped the Relic Contemptor for a Death Company.
Yes.
3 hammers, standard sort of loadout. I
Hmm.
think both of those choices were probably good choices.
I think so too.
Um, I don't know if I don't know if I need the healer. Like maybe I should run the librarian that you've been running with the null zone, because I mean you run the healer in your list though, right? You
I
run
do.
him with
Yes. Yeah.
selfless healer. You think he's worth
I
it?
do run Selfless Healer, yeah, and Teeth of Terra, and I've had this conversation with a lot of Blood Angel players, just because a lot of people are like, do you really think Selfless Healer is worth it? The extra points, this and that. But for me, it's just like the consistency of flat healing 2 units for 3 flat wounds. So characters all the time get hit by Eldritch Storm. When I play against these other players, and that's something you really can't avoid. You have to just kind of lean into it. And I can't tell you the number of times where I've had 2 characters down to 1 wound, and then the priest is able to just I mean, literally just be like, "Yep, back up to 4 and 4," and next turn they're back up to full, and at least they're not on a knife's edge now. And then bringing back an aggressor, bringing back I bring back eradicators actually more often than sanguinary guard, just because people always undercommit into them or overcommit. And I'm okay if you overcommit, because now your resources are going into them. And if you undercommit, it's such a feel bad when you leave one eradicator alive with another one on 1 wound, and then it's just flat 3 heal, revive, and it's just like you essentially brought almost roughly 70 or 80 points, whatever you want to work it out to, back just for free every turn, which I think is a great tax to pay going into a game. And rather than using that utility of 1 CP on a turn that you need it, I do understand that, but the 30 points for me just doesn't not make sense, if that makes sense to you.
No, it does make sense. I think I'm learning a lot. Hopefully, the viewers will be learning a lot from
Yeah.
you as well. Um, I guess I just would you what would it take to get Mephiston into your list? Like what? Like because this is a debate that's gone on, and people have actually flamed me
Yeah.
for a while. Like they watch the games I do on the channel. Like, why the fuck are you taking Mephiston? And I was like, because I wanted to, like I literally wanted to play him because he's our new Primaris model, and like
Yep.
you want to play the new thing, you spend the time painting them, and it's like I know he's not good enough. So what would it actually take for you to consider him?
So let me preface by saying this, okay? I believe it or not, so I only play one army. I've only ever played Blood Angels. I've never piloted another army before. So for me, it's like I'm a huge like Blood Angel fluff bunny, whatever you want to call it. So for me, when I saw Mephiston, got the point reduction, then Armor of Contempt happened, he was on the table for me in practice games. It just I've been playing with the other librarian on and off for so long. His ability to just move 12 inches all the time without having to cast Wings of Sanguinius, the ability to unlock the other psychic tree, which of course Null Zone is the power that makes all the difference in my opinion. And then of course the fact that you can customize him with better traits just puts him over the edge. I think a little bit too much in my opinion, and they're identical points. And the saddest thing about the whole conundrum with them, the one versus Mephiston, is that the non-Mephiston guy is getting +1 to cast, and then our actual chief librarian isn't. And it
Yeah,
literally it breaks my heart every time. So that's the unfortunate reason why I don't think Mephiston's touched the competitive table for me yet. But I have been thinking about multiple combinations, like one I can share obviously, and people might think it's kind of weird, but a good combination that I've been thinking about, just because of how much I value the Rites of War and Angelic Visage combo, is actually putting it on a librarian with the Blood Angel Psychic Tree, and then you have this librarian that can pretty much move 24 inches minimum, and then if he wants to advance, I think it's 27 inches. Oh, sorry, that's bad math. Sorry, 30. Is it 30 inches? Oh my god, 31 inches. Yeah,
yeah,
and you get a
31.
6 on the advance roll. Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So 31 inches and can take any objective on the board essentially. When you think about it. So it's just like that's a combination. It's cute. I don't think you need it, but just the fact that a guy like that could get all of this crazy combos because he can hold relics, warlord traits, and hold different trees, I just think does go such a long way, honestly, in the flexibility of competitive play.
Yeah, I know that is actually a very interesting combo, and you could actually still take Unleash Rage, which I think is arguably the best
Exactly.
power
Yes.
in the tree. If you're running Big Death Company, Big Sanguinary Guard, like, yeah,
Yep.
I think it was. I think I had 7 Sanguinary Guard, and so that was like 35 attacks, hitting on twos, re-rolling ones, and I get 13 sixes, which is like
Yeah.
when you do the math like that, that's almost a 30 or 40% raw DPS increase.
Oh yeah.
So that's where I'm struggling to decide, like, is Null Zone that much better than 13 extra hits on the Sanguinary Guard? And I guess situationally, it could go both ways. But Null Zone probably does have the more threat, because like the Unleash Rage, people aren't going to be scared of that. The Sanguinary Guard are charging you
Yeah.
anyway, whereas people are going, oh shit, I can't put this character within 12 of him because I'm just going to instantly lose my invuln, and that's going to be a big problem for me, right? So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, anything else you want to say about this list?
Yeah, no, the only things that obviously, and we can obviously dive deeper, you and I, other times, but like, the one thing, going back quickly just to the whole null zone conversation, I really think that, when players are building their lists, don't feel bad if like, well, I'm kind of tailoring it for these couple of guys or whatnot. Just understand your meta. Like, I can't stress that enough. Or if you're going to an event, paying attention for 5 minutes at, who might be going to the event, or what armies are in your local meta, because like that makes all the difference for me all the time. And like I said, I never purposely tech for one person ever, but I definitely will take a look at, well, who's actually registered for this event. Well, it looks like we've got 4 Custodes players, 3 Harlequin players, and 6 Tau. And that's obviously a crazy exaggeration, but it's just like, well, Nullzone makes sense this weekend. You know what I mean? And heck, sometimes it doesn't come up at all, but at least you're preparing yourself with the tools to feel like you have a chance in every game. So that's kind of what I wanted to just at least make known. But otherwise, I think you're definitely onto something great. I like the Terminators. I've actually been theorizing running a 5 man of Relic Terminators with Stormbolter and Lightning Claw, because I think at 165 they're actually quite a steal for what they can bring to the table.
I was gonna buy that
Yeah,
exact squad, but they're out. They've been
yeah,
out of stock for like 2 months now or something,
I
right?
know. Who's buying all the good Relic Terminators?
Somebody or someone's making a killing on
Gosh,
3D printing them.
yeah,
Um, yeah, Lightning Claw and Storm. I thought maybe you could throw a Chain Fist on the Sergeant, which might be cool. And the other thing
yep,
that I haven't done in this list, but people keep telling me that's quite cool
mhm,
in the Terminator Sergeant, is like Mastercraft is Thunderhammer.
yep,
Um, and I guess we're gonna we're gonna touch on Stephen Box's list next. But I guess something that
yep,
could have been cool with his list is Mastercraft, one of them Centurion drills. It's something that we kind of forget about. Like, we don't see that many sergeants running around with mastercrafted weapons. I guess
right,
possibly there's not so much value here, but when I use Terminators, I use Fury of the First a lot. I
right,
generally, or if there's something better like Death of the Traitors, I'd use that as well. But the Terminators, they need a bit of help, right? Because they're -1 to hit
they
with
do,
those hammers. So if you're
yep,
making them better, then maybe there is some value in just being like, well, this Terminator is a 4 damage hammer.
I do agree with you, I do,
Cool. All right, let's get on to slide 5, and this is I literally have this game in another tab on my monitor at the moment. I
yeah,
was watching Steven play against Sisters of Battle
yeah,
at
yeah,
the Bay Area Open, I think, which is a tournament just this weekend past.
it was, yes.
And have you had a chance to look at his list?
I have, yeah. I actually spoke with Steven on it just a little bit, just to talk about a couple things. He's a great guy. I've spoken to him for a little while now. Hopefully get to keep picking each other's brain on a couple things. But yeah, his list is definitely a very aggressive list. For those of you who have already watched his games, I'm sure you've seen that already. For those of you who haven't, I do actually recommend you do, because the beauty of actually the video that you and I have made today is actually showing you three quite different lists, actually, to some degree. I know there's obviously featuring similar things, but they actually all play quite differently, and they're all viable options. Like John, you can produce great results with them. I've been able to fortunately get some breaks go my way and put some results in, and then we have Mr. Box himself pull out what was it, a 7-1. So I mean, that's obviously nothing to be fretted about. So I mean, definitely a really great watch for people at home.
Yeah, and one thing about just the game that I watched of Stevens is Steven is like such an ambassador for fair play, and I actually love that.
Yeah,
So like he's helpful to his opponent. He plays everything very clearly by intent, and yeah, hopefully maybe at some point we'll get him on the channel as well. So let's have a look at this. He has basically done what you said to do with the Sanguinary Ancient, but with his priest, he's given him Visitor of Death and Rites of War. We obviously know Dante is there for the additional CP generation, and I guess his aura of leadership is going to be handy enough. The double incursors, the 5-man squad of Centurions with Flamers and Hurricane Bolters, and that's something that I didn't think I would ever say Stephen was playing, but that's made its way in. We've got the Death Company with 1 extra hammer. We've got Soul Warden and Wrath of Baal on the Ancient. We've got 7 Sanguinary Guard times 3, I believe. Oh, shit, my slides went backwards. Yeah, times 3. And then we've got an Assault Squad, and I assume it's purely for your Retrieve Nat Mundata, this Assault Squad.
Yeah, so this list is very much a lean, mean list. It does one thing, and it does it really well. Obviously, I'm someone who likes to have a bit more tools, as we saw from my list versus this, but this is the one thing I can't stress enough, and I'm not going to go on a rant, John, I promise.
Sure.
But the one thing I can't stress enough is what does bother me a lot of the time, and again, this is not putting anybody out in a spotter or whatever, but people keep asking, what's the list? What's the list? What's the list? And I don't like that question at all. The best question you should ask is, once you've acquired the list, obviously you have to know what it is how does the list play? Because people keep on being so fixated on the assault centurions and oh my god, that's so crazy. But it's how he's using the centurions that makes all the difference. They don't just show up and just start to perform well. And like, he's such a great player, and he didn't accidentally wake up into 7-1. You know what I mean? Like, it goes a long way to understand how practiced you are with the list. I'm sure he's gotten a couple of reps beforehand. And honestly, just understanding the tempo of an aggressive army makes all the difference in this situation. So sorry, I had to pick that bone really quickly, because people are always just like, yep, let's just copy and paste 5 centurions into my list and they're going to do wonders now. And it's like, it really isn't the case. Now, can they do wonders? Absolutely. But you have to understand how they fit into your list, or what they're doing, and why they're actually doing it.
Yeah, I think that's probably why net listing is not a good idea, right? When you just copy
Yeah.
a list and you don't know the strategies. From my limited watching of his game, I guess the Centurions are essentially bodyguards for all our squishier Sanguinary Guard. I mean, I don't know if Sanguinary Guard are that squishy these days, but I mean, they do die the second they get focused down. So the Centurions are going to protect them from being charged. The Centurions are also going to... I mean, Centurions are a great model for the Sanguinary Priest to bring back at 65 points a model as well. And the Centurions are pretty unchargeable by infantry. When I used to run Centurions I used to run them a lot against Sisters, and I also used to put them up front. And that's actually why I thought you might run Aggressors with the Flamers, because Repentia were a real problem for me against Sisters, piling out those Rhinos, getting an additional move. I think they can... Can they still advance and charge Repentia?
They can with a Repentia Superior.
Yeah, so they can still advance and charge. So their movement out of Rhinos is like crazy fast. You're talking like they can move 15 inches and then charge you. So
they actually won't be able to advance and charge out of a Rhino, just because I believe that the Superior has to be next to them in the command phase. So they will be on the board, but still, you're right though. It is still a crazy threat. I think it's still the 24-inch threat range, which is amazing when you have Miracle Dice included, obviously, which is insane.
Yeah, so having a bunch of flamers in the front that can basically flame the hell out of Repentia, and they won't survive that many flamer shots. I think a 5 or 6 man squad of Repentia I don't even think would survive 3 Centurions. So, yeah, it's an interesting take on Centurions. My personal opinion is I find Terminators are the same as Centurions. They're 5-inch move. I find them horrifically slow. And if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm running this Blood Angels list, I'm going to take 2 squads of Terminators," I'm like, oh, it's like you bring the Terminators down in a board quadrant. They're basically stuck there because they're just so darn slow. So I guess Centurions, to go for Oath of Moment, to hold the middle of the board, to be durable and have some sort of way of being revived as well, I think is a reasonably decent play, I guess. But I think you still need to be a pretty high skill player to make that happen.
Yeah, and the thing with this list too, actually, which it was a shame actually that I didn't see that his priest doesn't have the selfless healer upgrade, because he went for the combination of the the Visage of Death and Rights of War, which again, I understand the combination, but not to critique the list too much, but in my opinion, that's why, for example, like I love Dante. He's my favorite character from all the Blood Angel novels, just all the lore and everything. And it's a shame that my current chapter master, with double warlord trait, as with Soul Warden, Rights of War, and then Angelic Possession for his relic, just is able to to provide so much more to the army, unfortunately. And then that allows the Sanguinary Priest to have the Teeth of Terra. So all of a sudden, he's probably one of the killiest characters we have, which is unfortunately sad to say, but it's true. And then he's also just imagine him reviving a 65-point Centurion for free now without spending a single CP to do so. So it's just like, I do think that was an easy tweak, but again, I know Steven, he loves his Dante, and I respect him. Mad props to that. So that's cool.
Yeah, do you know, I hate Dante's Infernal Pistol compared to the reroll one hit, one wound Infernal Pistol. I think the reliability you get there is just...
That's
yeah. And the thing about Infernal... Here's the problem, though. I keep running that darn Infernal Pistol, and it goes for like 3 games and does nothing. And then I one-shot something for 8 wounds, and I'm like, oh yeah, that Infernal Pistol. Like, that's the best thing ever. Like, you just one-shot your character forever, and, but it doesn't happen.
You bring the Infernal Pistol.
Yeah. It's the threat. So this is a cool list by Stephen. It's nice to see someone thinking completely outside the box, because I'm pretty sure if you'd said to people before tournaments recently that someone would be sitting... Basically, I think he should have won. From what I understand, there was a mistake on one of the top tables, and he could have gone 8-0. But if someone had said that it would have been Blood Angel's list with 5 Centurions, I think we would have all eaten our hats.
Yeah, and just quickly touching on that too, like I said, and I consider the Centurions myself, but like I said, just they didn't make sense for my list, and that's okay. You gotta understand, because at the same time, in this list and what he's going for with his playstyle with this army, the 3 aggressors and 3 eradicators wouldn't make any sense. They would maybe kind of feel off. They would maybe slow down his tempo of what he wants to do. So naturally, maybe some people are maybe agreeing with my choices just because they're like, well, that's 2 whole new dimensions to the game. They offer such different threats. But remember though, like these were, the 5 Centurions weren't just put in there for nothing. Like they were there for a reason, and it's a calculated assessment. So it's like, I don't know if the aggressors and eradicators would actually help this list. It actually could maybe be detrimental to the list success. So this definitely was a good choice, for what he was going for.
Yeah. I was going to say 5 Centurions, I think, is slightly more points than the Eradicators and the...
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the aggressors, the eradicators, and I believe the voidsmen. I think that roughly is near. I think it's just over 325, but roughly the same.
Okay. But I guess something else that you said that's quite cool is, so here's, you've got a list that's got Centurions, your list has got aggressors, my list has got Terminators, so that's sort of like a neat thing within all 3. But I don't think you could argue which is best and which is worse in all the situations, but they're all definitely interesting. Okay, I think that about wraps it up. Is there anything else you want to say on this one?
Well, no. On this list in general, I'm excited to see what Steven's planning to do. I mean, I have talked with him offline, and he's told me a couple of changes. I'm not going to spoil it. That's going to be his to share. But looking forward to seeing what he's doing. I'm obviously really looking forward to seeing how your list evolves, and obviously I know you and I could go back and forth anytime because we're just so passionate about Blood Angels. But in general, just wanted to say thank you for having me on, and it was super enjoyable on my end.
No, thank you so much for coming on, Sam. It's definitely good to speak to someone that's got like some real GT winning credibility. I think we've featured you on the channel before at least twice. Once for a win and once for a very high place. And Auspex Tactics featured you this week as well. I think I just told you that before we came on here, and you haven't even seen it yourself.
No.
So I guess you can go see what he's saying and give him a comment, tell him that he's got it all wrong just for shits and giggles.
I'll say John sent me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he knows me. I comment on some of, because he did a review on like this Tempest Scion list that was like, it actually came second in a GT, and I beat it in the penultimate game. So we were both 3-0, and I beat it. It was the most horrible list ever. It was just like millions of Scions with plasma guns and melta guns dropping everywhere.
That's scary.
Yeah, yeah, very scary considering we were all toughness 4, you know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, no, it was a fun list to play.
it's great.
But cool. All right. Thanks again, Sam. And if you did enjoy the video, you can consider subscribing to me here on this channel, please. And also, there will be a link to Sam's channel in the video description. And I think, what's your most recent videos on, Sam?
Yeah, my most recent video is on the Motor City, roundup pretty much. So I mean, if you wanted to see the full breakdown, I can't remember how long the video is, but I'll walk you through every game. Essentially, my list, what I did in every game, where it got me, and things to come in the future. So that's it for me.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for watching, and a big shout out to Sam for taking time to help me make this video. If you want to support the channel, please hit that big join button underneath or check out some of the links in the video description. I really do appreciate your support. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, then please do, because I can see from my analytics that a bunch of you are watching the videos but aren't subscribed, so what are you waiting for? And I will catch you guys all in the next video. By the blood are we made strong, brothers. Peace.